All right, welcome everyone this evening to the Sustainable Communities Scrutiny panel. I just want to first of all just start by thanking you all for coming out today. It's great to have people from Clarion here today, a number of residents and audience members as well joining us. I just want to start the meeting by just, take this opportunity to remind everyone to treat all members of the committee and all the witnesses and everyone who's given up the time today to be respectful to each other and treat everyone as you'd like to be treated yourself. And just to let you know that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube as well. So welcome to all those who are joining us online as well. So we've got a lot to get through today. So I think we'll just get straight into things. And just to start off with, are there any apologies for absence? I don't think there is, looking around in the room. I know Jill is unable to join us in person today, but is joining us online. So is there any interest to declare? No? And lastly, are the minutes from the previous meeting all agreed? Agreed? Right, fantastic. So moving on then to the actions log. Are there any questions that council want to raise about the actions log? Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. One of the items on the actions log is going to be the community skips item. I noticed that's on the cabinet agenda for this forthcoming cabinet meeting. The cabinet decision essentially refers to the ongoing consultation, and I'd just like to ask that that item stays on the actions log as something we might want to pick up in future. Normally, when something gets a cabinet decision, it sort of drops off the action log as complete, but in this circumstance, it isn't going to be complete. It's waiting for the outcome of the sort of consultation, and so I would ask we might leave that item on the action log.
Well, I know that that item is currently in the consultation that we have on that's ongoing at the moment, going for residents. So I'd say it'd be great if we can wait and see the results of those consultations. So leave it off as for now, and then depending on the results of those consultation, and I'll be coming to an update on the kind of waste services that are coming up a bit later on, and Natasha will give an update. But I think if we can take the decision as agreed, or whatever they agree at the cabinet, and then when we have more information like that, then we can move on and see what the results of that are.
I think maybe I've been slightly unclear what I'm asking. So normally the action log is a list of recommendations that we have made to cabinet, and once the cabinet has reached a decision and any action has been decided and followed through, they drop off the action log as complete. The cabinet decision on this item says we are undertaking a wider piece of consultation, and this is part of that mix. So all I was asking is, can we not lose this item off the action log? Can it stay on the action log so we can pick it up when the consultation is complete and we have some actual action agreed on this item? That's what I'm asking.
Okay, I'm happy with that. Is it? Yeah, cool, great. Are there any other questions on the actions log from the last meetings? All right, fantastic. Well, if I could then move on to our next item and pass over to Councillor Irons, who's joining us today to give an update on the waste consultation and the recent decision by the council. So, Natasha, if I could pass over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Is that coming around? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to come to scrutiny. I just thought it'd be worth updating you on some things that have happened since our last meeting, mainly the decision we took on the 10th of October, sorry, I can't remember what month we're in now, the 10th of October, to not extend our current contract with Veolia. I hope you've all had a chance to read the report and can understand the process and what was the decision, it went into that decision. So just to review, the officers had, as you know, there was a break clause this year in that contract, and the officers reviewed the contract and reviewed a proposal put forward by Veolia to in what guise they may want to extend, and that guise would have increased the costs of the current contract by about 27%. So that's no additional service. It's the same service but costs more money. But not just that, we also would have accepted more risk as a council for things like disposal costs around commercial waste. And you know, we will have to acknowledge that there has been some underperformance around things like street cleaning, and seeing as we had a break clause, it seemed logical to accept the recommendation and to not extend the current contract. So as you know, we've kicked off our consultation into the future of the waste services. It's just a chance to kind of understand what our residents want to prioritise, and try and flush out some of the key things we need to focus on, and to drive improvement, and to work together to have a service that we all want. So that's happening at the moment. You'll have seen our online survey. We've had over 1,000 responses so far, which is pretty good. We're trying to beat the parking survey that got 3,000. So can we please, please promote it on all your channels. We've also got the pop-up roadshows. The next one is on the 9th of November in Mitcham Town Centre. We'll have another one in Collier's Wood, and we're trying to get one set up in Pollard's Hill as well. And if you can't get to online, or you can't get to one of the pop-ups, you can pop into one of our libraries and fill out the survey there. And we're also holding telephone interviews and focus groups to ensure that the survey itself is statistically significant and statistically covers the borough. So that's happening now. The consultation will end on the 22nd of November. Please do make sure you take part in that. So we'll get the results hopefully back in about December time. And we will come back to scrutiny for a pre-decision scrutiny on what happens next, on the decision on what type of service we want on some parts of the specification, because ultimately that's really important. And we'll give scrutiny a chance to have a look at that and to really pick it apart, and have hopefully, having spoken to the chair, hopefully we'll have just a meeting on waste, so we can really give it enough time and have a proper discussion about things. So that's just kind of what I wanted to update you on. I'm happy to take questions. I hope there's officers in the room in case there's anything that's technical. Yeah, so happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Irons. And yeah, just to reiterate, one of the things that Natasha mentioned was that we'll be doing a one-off meeting for the panel, just to look at the waste options once we have the information available from officers, and on all the kind of possible avenues that we could take that. So there will be a meeting in the new year on that. So for right now, I will take a round of questions, but this is not the kind of the meaty time to kind of dig into the discussions that we're going to be having. But so, is there any questions in the room on anything that Tasha just mentioned? Right.
Yes, thank you. One of the outcomes of this will be quite an extensive change of waste process. So has Cabinet member or officers got any external experts in to help advise us, rather than just taking one set of views alone?
And if I can pass to Anthony now as well.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Natasha, and thanks particularly for the opportunity of pre-decision scrutiny coming forward as well. Very grateful for that. I wondered if you might be able to outline how the Future Services questionnaire was put together, and who, sort of what process there will be for reviewing and reporting on those responses. I noticed that all the waste partnership boroughs have the same questionnaire, so I presume it wasn't put together by Merton, but it would be interesting to understand how it was put together and how it's being reviewed.
Is there any other questions on there whilst we're doing this round? Great, over to you, Natasha.
So Dan, yes, we'll be having external advice, just to have a bit of an independent look at what the officers are recommending, and we've got a project board set up at the moment to work through our options. We'll also be looking at other councils and seeing how they do this and what options they've taken. So we're having a bit of we are looking outside of ourselves to try and do this right, and to get as independent advice as we can. Anthony, well, yes, every borough is doing its own version of consultation, but ours, we adapted a lot of the questions ourselves because we wanted to focus on street cleaning. We also wanted to add in something around how the council itself behaves, so around, do we want to invest in things like digital technology to make sure you can track your bin collection and if it's missed, and how you can be kept up to date about that. So we have adapted it for Merton, and all boroughs were supposed to adapt their version of it to their own specification. So I'm not sure what the other boroughs might have or might not have put into theirs. I'm not sure if they've done any kind of in-person elements to their consultations. I'm not sure if they've made them available at libraries. I've just kind of focused on making sure our questionnaire is appropriate to what we wanted to know from our residents.
Great, thanks, Natasha. Are there any final questions? One last question from Anthony, and then we'll move on.
Thank you. Sorry, it was just the second part of my question, which was how the process that the consultation will be, how it will be reviewed and analysed.
Sure. So that will be hopefully. So we've got an external partner who's collating the data. So obviously the council isn't going to hold the data, and you know, we're not going to. So we're not misappropriating. So there's an external company who's going to be doing the analysis for us, and we'll be getting that back in December. And that will then form part of the recommendations that come back about what we should do next. So that I would hope those results would also come to that pre-decision scrutiny meeting, so you can see it for yourselves and answer any questions, ask any questions around that as well.
Great. Thanks very much, Natasha, for that update. Yeah, really appreciate you coming along and explaining that. And yeah, as mentioned before, there will be a meeting that we'll be holding in the new year, and we'll be looking to all the options before us. And so moving on onto the agenda, we're now coming up to the question of clarion and repairs and maintenance. So just to kind of outline how we're going to do this is we're going to shortly have a presentation from Marek on some of, or a talk on some of the work they've been doing. I'll then be passing over to some of the residents who've joined us this evening for the chance for them to have their say before going back to Marek, and then having a chance to bring in councillors. And we'll be, I think I've explained this to all councillors at this point, but instead of doing rounds of questions, we'll be doing sort of lines of inquiry. So I'll pass over to a councillor for them to ask a few questions in a row, if they so wish, on a particular subject, so that we can have a bit more of a detailed discussion between us all. But also conscious also of time, that there's also a lot to dig into here. And so if I have to cut you short, then, you know, apologies in advance. So if we could try and keep questions and points to a minimum, so that you have a chance to see as many different people as possible. So if I could pass over now to Marek.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. So I don't have a presentation as such. I submitted the report. So yeah, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to kind of read through that. I guess things to draw attention to or point out in the report. We do around 100 repairs a day in the London Borough of Merton. We absolutely accept that not everything goes right on all of these 100 per day. At 100 per day, that's probably less by volume than other clarion areas, than other stock types. However, the spend is far higher. So as an average, it shows the complexity of the repairs here. Slightly less repairs at a higher price. And I think that goes back to something we've always said, that the stock types, the stock archetypes, the type of property, the type of stock here is extremely complex, and that's reflected in those statistics. At 2.1, just to point out, the planned reactive maintenance team is absolutely an acknowledgement of that. The Equans repairs and maintenance contract is supposed to be for those simple day-to-day repairs. And over the years, we've seen that the actual building types, the types of repairs that are required, the type of intrusive survey needed to identify the source of some of these repairs requires far more work. And the planned reactive maintenance team has been set up to do that, as have the complex case team, which is the complex repair surveyor. And I added a case study to the papers, which just shows how difficult it can be to work with external partners to trace and remedy some of these repairs. The resident liaison team, also point out, is Merton specific. There are 5 officers now working full-time, again, on the most complex of repairs, those that are requiring multiple visits, those that are sometimes requiring decanting of tenants, but also in recognition of some of the vulnerabilities and some of the really complex requirements on the most difficult jobs. The paper itself sets out the level of spend here in Merton. So even before we go into the £1.3 billion that's been put forward for the regeneration here, the level of investment required to maintain the stock in Merton is far above the level of investment required in other parts of our stock. And again, that's the complex stock archetypes. There's still a lot of system builds here, no fines, and other system builds from the 60s, and tracing, remedying leaks and other repairs in these types of properties is extremely difficult. By way of update, I won't talk for too much longer. There's two types of customer feedback, customer satisfaction surveys we now do. The external one by the leadership factor is done about a month to 6 weeks after the repairs have been completed. That shows in the report as a satisfaction rating of 82%. The satisfaction rating for September, which we just got yesterday, is now 86%. So I think it shows some positive improvements following the action plan that has been put in with Equans. And that's a recognition that the satisfaction ratings have been quite static and that there are issues that really do need to be resolved. But we also now have locales. And this is the system by which when an appointment is made, it's texted to the mobile phone of the resident. They can track their engineer on the day, see where they are, how long it is till they arrive. But also after the repair has been marked as complete, another text, the follow-up text is sent, which asks the resident to rate the repair, the engineer, the interaction. So the Locales app was soft tested in September. October was full rollout, and the average score was, I think, during soft launch 4.02, sorry, 4.09 out of 5, and that's gone up to 4.2. We have a response. This is sent to everyone who reports the repair, both communal and in their house by mobile phone. We have a response rate of 5.9%, up from 5.6% during the soft launch. And I think it's a key part of our improvement plan to get this advertised to tenants, because it's the first time we've had instant feedback on repairs, on missed appointments, on cancelled appointments, that we can immediately follow up with both the resident and the contractor. So this is an aspect that I think will be developed. We need to get those response rates up to probably closer to 30–40%. And if we can advertise to residents just how important it is that they use this to feedback both good and bad interactions with engineers, that really will go a long way to helping to improve the service. So I wasn't going to speak for any other aspects of the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Matt. Well, I might take this opportunity then to bring in some of the residents that have joined us today. So if I could start with Tony. Tony, over to you.
Good evening. My name is Tony Wells. I'm the chair of the Sadler Close Residents Association. Back in 2016, we had major works done on our estate. United Living, I don't think Clarion actually went into any detail about the costing of the job. At the end of the job, we had an awful argument to try and get refunds. Some of the works were £16,000 over budgeted. Back last year, around about this time last year, because so many of our tenants had complained about repairs, we had a meeting in a local centre in Shack 69, where all of Clarion's officials came. Personally, I reported several things regarding my immediate neighbours and other people on the estate. To this day, those things still have not been dealt with. In April this year, we had our first AGM since before lockdown. Back in the AGM, we had to threaten to go to the Ombudsman or to solicitors to get things done. Finally, after all this, a task and finish action plan has been brought to the table. However, it is very slow in the process, very, very slow. Personally, I cannot say that we've had a very good experience with Clarion at all since they've taken over. I think I can leave it at that because otherwise I could go on forever, really. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony. If I can now pass over to Sarah. So, Rosie, are you okay to operate Sarah's mic?
I live in Derby Road. What is it that helping have this organize the pipeline down? What is it that makes it have to go on the chat, which I found really difficult? So someone has to do it for me. We do have a phone number now, but it's really annoying if you can't email yourself because of the dexterity. And also, I have an OT from April 2 who hasn't been to see me in about 9 months, and they are protected through Clarion, and also I can't phone them. I have to email them for the OT to bring me back. And also, I'd like to say that some residents have been told they can't have automatic doors. So if there's a fire or something, they'll be stuck inside there. And also, I'd like to say, although we've had nice windows put in, they make funny squeaking noises, and then the door doesn't open or shut very easily.
Keep coming back.
And they repaired it and it keeps coming back.
Yeah, about 2 years.
And that's been about 2 years. Oh yeah, the problem with the hoist, you phone up and they say, oh yes, we're on our way, and then they sometimes say, oh no, we can't come out today. And being a disabled resident, I need my ceiling track hoist, because I only have one carer and she's only allowed to use that one hoist.
How long have you had someone little head?
Sometimes I've had to wait for 6 months for anything to be done.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate it. And thanks so much for coming. Really do appreciate it. And if I could lastly pass over to Charles.
Good evening, House. My speech will contain my observations over the years that I have lived within the estate. No insult, no threat, no personal abuse, but only facts and figures. 99% of residents within the estate are working class people, and as such, they are affected by austerity measures, declining healthcare standard, low pay, and inadequate housing. Don't get me wrong, Clarence is not the one to be blamed for this, but you know as well as I do that the present economic system is based on greed, short-term gains, private appropriation of wealth. Controversial question is, what will Clarence do? Well, as one of the largest landlords in Britain, is Clarence a democratically and responsive landlord? Energy performance within the properties within the estate rates between E and F. It's even a struggle to get a C within the whole of that property, within the whole of the estate. It's clear, are they advocates of social rent or market rent? If we go back to 2010, when the council privatized its housing with the full support of the then Labour councillors, tenants were promised new new and enhanced life chances. Within months of privatization, Clarence reversed its agreement with the council, and rent went from social rent to market rent. The then Labour councillors failed to use their power to stop this process. So that was a letdown. The issue with Clarence is that it is not a democratically run local housing association. In theory, it may think it is, but in practice, it's a no-no. Now let's talk about repairs. Just replacing light bulb, the one right in front of your house, takes a year for Clarence to replace. And because those bulbs are not even readily available in the market, it's a struggle for residents to go to the high street. It's not something you can get in the high street. So the front of your house is totally in darkness for about a year. And you look for all sorts of excuses under the sun as to why they can't bring it. They promise they will come, they won't come. There's this portal cabin right in front of my house. It's supposed to be an extension of Clarence's office. It is never manned. When you go there and knock, there's nobody there. When there's somebody there, if you lodge in your complaint, it is never passed forward. It just ends. And regarding the roof leakage, it's still a working in progress. Though there's and the only other problem is that when the roof is even fixed, the ceiling inside the house is damaged as well. So they just do the part of the roof. They don't come back and fix the ceiling in the inside of the property. And they don't usually do, apart from the speaker that spoke earlier, they don't do the customer survey. We now have smartphone, it is easy. They have our numbers, we can easily do the survey there. So as a result of which you don't know the satisfaction. When they said they are going to repair a roof, you don't know if they have repaired it. They will not text you back, the job is done, blah, 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 and everything. May I refer you a few months back, the television documentary. Television viewers were horrified by the conditions of Clarence properties, but residents were not. Since after the documentary, I think Clarence has stepped up with its repair programs. There's an improvement. They are now better, but there's still for improvement. On the talking about regeneration, Clarence has spoon-fed its own tenants, and they have been wrapping them in cotton wool, making the regeneration very easy process for them. Private tenants have been given a kick in the teeth. They've not done anything. And I want to bring to the attention of Clarence that both their tenants and the private tenants within the estate live within the same economic community. So they need a little bit of assistance as well. And lastly, the appointment of ASKIVA by Clarence, I think that's a real breakthrough. I have to give them 10 out of 10 for that, because the ask giver has been able to break that communication barrier that tenants have with Claron, and just make some process less complicated. There's still a lot to say, but as time is our greatest ally, I think I'll drop now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Charles. Marek, if I could pass over to you just to respond to some of the points that people had to say. Oh, Vicky, yeah, absolutely.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Vicky Bonner. I'm Director of Housing at Clarion. Can I just say thanks ever so much to the residents for attending today, because it's really useful to sort of put some meat on the bones and to get some real life examples of things that clearly haven't gone as well as we would like. I think as Marek said, we do a lot of repairs every day. Absolutely accept that we don't get everything right by any means, but we do monitor our performance. We then have lots of other teams that carry out repairs, such as, you know, planned investment, our sort of major works teams, that kind of thing. But absolutely accept that we don't get everything right. What we would like to think is that we are a learning organisation, and where we've got something wrong, we do try to learn so that it's a better experience for residents moving forward. But Tony, you know, accept clearly that the performance that you've had from us does not sound good enough at all. Obviously, I haven't got the details to hand because I haven't known about these specific cases. But in terms of what you were saying, I'm pleased that we set up a task and finish group to look at what the issues are. I'm sorry that it's so slow, but I'll certainly take that back and have a look at what the issues are that have been raised there and see what we can do to speed that process up. And I'm sorry that the repairs that sorry, it keeps going on and off, sorry. I'm sorry that the repairs that you've reported haven't been done as quickly as you'd like, and certainly after the meeting, more than happy to get you a name and address, and we can have a look at those as soon as we get back to the office tomorrow. In terms of Sarah, I completely get what you're saying, that actually, you know, you might need to interact with us in a different way, and we need to, you know, come and see you and talk to you about what that might be. So that's absolutely fine. I think you talked about some residents being told that they can't have an automatic door. Obviously, I don't know that detail, but more than happy to take that away and have a look at the circumstances, because I understand your concern should there be a fire. And it's nice to know that we've put in some nice new windows, but not really good enough if they're still squeaky. And you know, we've come out a few times and they're still not right. So we will get somebody out. So again, after the meeting, we can take your name and address and look into that and have a look at the issue that you've got with the hoist, but also why it's taking so long. So more than happy to look at all of the issues that you have raised tonight. And it's this kind of thing which is invaluable to us, because it's real life lived experience and helps us you know, improve our performance. And we'll also have a look at what's gone wrong and why it's taken so long. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. In terms of Charles, I got most of what you said, Charles, I think. Absolutely accept, you know, the austerity issue and the health issues and the low pay. And I think this is going to be a massive issue for Clarion residents and for residents, you know, all residents. We are doing as much as we can in terms of that. We've got Clarion Futures who help people get into work, help people get better paid work, and also help people digitally, but also look at welfare benefits and trying to make sure that the residents have the maximum benefits and that they know all the things that they can do so that they can make their money go further. Albeit we do know that it's going to be very, very difficult for our residents, and we're looking at what else we can do to help our residents through these really, really difficult times. I think you'd raised, Charles, something around social rents and market rents, and I'm wondering, without knowing the detail of where you live, about whether that's Eastfields. And certainly when we're doing a regeneration scheme, one of the things we do is obviously we move residents out in order to knock down buildings. And one of the things we don't want to do ever is to leave those properties empty when there's such a high demand for housing. So we do move people in on a temporary basis. So I don't know whether there's something there around the market rent or something for the properties where we've let to people who are not social tenants, but we can certainly talk to you about that. Can only apologise that it's taken a year to replace the bulbs in front of your house. Clearly, we need to do much better, and we will, and we can talk to you about that. I think you're referring to Eastfields because you're talking about an office, Eastfields office. We have been staffing that a lot, but in actual fact, the take-up of residents coming there was relatively low, but we do still staff it a couple of times a week. Good to hear that the roof works have been going well. They're nearly finished on Eastfields, which is great. It took us a little bit longer because we had to get agreements from the leaseholders there that we could touch their roofs because they actually owned the roofs, but we've got those now, so that's moving forward really, really well. I think that was about it. I mean, I've almost certainly missed some individual bits, but Marek, I don't know if you or Jackie had anything else to add.
I mean, just to pick up on Sarah's issues with the cancelled appointments, I mean, cancelling appointments at short notice is unacceptable. So we'll just have to get details of which contractor that is. I know if it's a hoist, it may be a specialist contractor. I know there have been issues. There's not many of them around. These are quite complex bits of kit, but you know that's unacceptable. So we need to figure out who that was. And get that seen to. Certainly, as I think was intimated there, and our RLOs spend a lot of time now on the estates, engaging with residents, working from the Eastfields office, which is still open 5 days a week. So we have seen a real drop off in people coming to speak to us. There are days nobody comes in. But we still staff it. It's useful to have there. The complex disrepair surveyor has been based there. Again, as we have finished the roof works there, that's dropped off as well because there isn't the caseload coming in, which I think mirrors the comment made there that the general feedback we're having from residents there is positive, and they are saying it's improving. Obviously, we've introduced the at no expense to the residents, the 2 weekly refuse collections, which has instantly improved the situation there, and goes to show that the rodent issue on big estates, the weekly collection just wasn't enough. Again, the RLOs are down there speaking to residents. We can I know it's a different comment made, but we do speak to residents on the doorsteps. We can take their repairs issues then and there, and we feed them through. And just on that point, the Director of Customer Services has convened and is convening resident working groups through our resident involvement networks about the contact centre, about how people contact us to do kind of an end-to-end evaluation of any difficulties people are having using our contact centre and reporting their repairs as part of a wider service review in that area to see if we can remove some of those obstacles.
Thank you very much, Vicky and Marek. So I'm going to open the floor up now to questions from councillors. So if I can maybe start with you, Dan.
Hi, my name is Dan. So I grew up on a Clarion estate, and I know firsthand what it is like to live on a Clarion-run estate, where the communal corridors are punctuated by the drip, drip, drip of pipes that are always leaking, where you have boxes sitting on corridors in the expectation that soon the pipe will be leaking, where disused features are left to fester and become a magnet for vermin, where communal security doors on Sadler Close, they have not been fixed for years. You have people entering these properties and using it for shelter. You have drug users using their drugs on families' doorsteps. And this has been going on for years. And I don't even have to go out. I speak to residents on Le Burn and Sadler Close on the Eastport estate. And what Tony was talking about right there, about the empty promises, that's not Tony's experience. That is typical. What Sarah was talking about delays of 6 months, that's not just Sarah's experience. That is typical. What Charles was talking about a simple repair taking over a year to fix, that is not just Charles. That is typical. So for Clarion, sorry seems to not be the hardest word, it's the easiest word. The thing I noticed with Clarion is that you guys talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. Why do you think that residents are, when they think of Clarion, they think of shoddy service, shoddy repairs, about things taking ages to get fixed? I don't know why you're smirking, Marek. So is this because your senior leadership have any idea what is happening on the ground? Do you get it? Do you understand what is happening and why residents might not be attending Clarion representatives' office hours all the time? There might be drop-offs. Do you know why? Because they think, what's the point? What's the point in me getting stressed and angry and saying the same thing again and again and again? Does the senior leadership get it?
Pass over to you guys to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, so Sadler's Close, you're absolutely right. There are endemic leaks there. It's it's a dreadful build, is the reality. You've got pipes that are set within the concrete. It's incredibly difficult trying to find leaks. They go all over the place. It's not the standard of housing that we would want at all. That's why we are having a look at Sadler's Close, and we're having a look at what we need to do in terms of the future. Is it a regeneration thing? Do we need to do something more significant? And that's why we've committed to come back by December, I think it is, to talk to you about what we need to do on that estate. But it's a hugely difficult estate to manage, and a hugely difficult estate to repair. And we accept that the conditions those residents are living in isn't what we would want. And that's why we are looking at a longer term solution for that estate. But I accept it's not of the quality that we would want for our Clarion residents.
So when it comes to the feedback, the key performance indicators like you have on page 7, how many residents made up that 85% figure? Was it 8 out of 10?
No, it's so firstly, it's done independently by, it's not done by us, it's done by, as Marek said, the Leadership Factor, which is a well-known and independent organisation. And what happens is anybody who's had a repair, we send over our entire list of people who've had a repair over to the Leadership Factor, and they randomly pick a selection of those residents and they contact them. And it's not that you might find 85 were happy and 15% weren't. They score it out of 10. They say, how satisfied were you with the repair? And that's where you get the 86% for September, but it's lower than we would like. It's lower than in other areas, and I think that's reflective of the condition of the stock. I mean, as Marek has said, we spend more in Merton than we do elsewhere because of the complexity of the stock. And we've put more investment in terms of people in Merton, and we've put more investment in terms of money in Merton and having programs for dealing with the issues. But that is reflective of the fact that the stock is incredibly difficult to manage. But we would like that to be better. It's been static for too long. It's good to see that it has gone up to 86%, but we would like it to be higher.
My question was, how many people make up that 10%?
Sorry.
Was it 10? Was it 100? Is it 1,000?
I genuinely can't remember, but I'm more than happy to send that out because it is statistically valid. It's not us that choose how many. That there's thresholds, and you have a degree of confidence according to how many people are surveyed, etc. So it's not us that do it. It is done by a leading satisfaction survey thing. So there's no, we're only going to choose 10 people, 20 or whatever. But it's done monthly, and it is it's a fair amount of people. Can you remember?
Yeah, so it's 100, and it's done by phone survey. So it's actually them trying to contact and talk through all of the issues with everybody. There's a range of questions, as I say, totally independent. They can choose whoever from whichever estates. But what Vicky says about being statistically valid, there's also a great deal of confidence that that there's continuity in what comes through. And also, I think, I accept everything you're saying, which is why we've got the improvement plan. The things I've outlined, these are all new things that have been introduced. We accept these repairs are complex. We accept Sadler's is really complex. We're using brand new technologies, leak tracing companies, things that haven't been used before. It's a really challenging state, which you well know, and a really expensive one to work on.
But I'm also more than happy to send some more detail about the satisfaction survey and the methodology and everything like that, if that would be useful.
Can I go back to repairs? So one of the things I've been asking is about for before and after pictures. I know you do it for roof repairs, and this is, Marek, slightly typical of some of the letters I write to you and the responses I get. You don't answer the question I asked. Can you do it for all repairs? Can you mandate your contractors to do before and after pictures? Because I've seen some residents after pictures where leaking pipes have been fixed up with specialist tape. That's not acceptable. So you should protect yourselves. And secondly on that, I note in one of your replies recently to me, Marek, we talked about the tracking documents so that complaints can be monitored. In my original question, I asked, can councillors be kept in the loop about this? Can councillors in the local area have access to this tracking document? And in your reply, you did not mention at all whether councillors would have access to these tracking documents about monitoring repairs. Would that also be possible?
Yeah, the use of photos, absolutely. I think I put a few into the report, but it was a difficult report to kind of fit them into. Pictures speak 1,000 words, and when you look at the pictures of Eastfield's roofs before and after, what Vicky mentioned there about having done all of the freeholders as well, you could see the issues on the old roof, and you can see why this new solution is such a good solution. We are in the process of updating our repair systems. It's slightly difficult because in Merton we use an external contractor, but certainly attaching photos to all repairs is a key priority. It's I mentioned it in here as the repairs blueprint, and that's absolutely a key requirement of that, because so many of these inquiries can immediately be answered when you track back through and look at the photos. And that's another key thing about the RLOs. All of the appointments they go out to, all of the complex repairs they get involved in, they keep photographic evidence throughout the whole process. So absolutely. In terms of the responses, I can only apologize. I read through all of them myself. I try and check that the key points are answered. So if there are aspects that weren't, then I'll take that up with the team, because as you can imagine, there's all the members' inquiries come to me, and I do want to read them myself. I do try and quality check them, but it's not just Merton, it's South London. If you've missed something, if something's been missed, always come back to me and I will pick it up again. The tracker, yeah, absolutely. We meet with the leader's office to go through all of the active cases that come through that route, and there's I don't think there's any issues in circulating that more widely, but we may have to do it at ward level.
Just have to check probably in terms of confidentiality, but in essence, in principle, we wouldn't have a problem. I mean, we meet with the MP weekly as well, and we go through her complaints. We meet with the MP's office, and I think in general that works really, really well. So, actually, we'd be happy to put something like that in place.
Cool. And Dan, just last question.
Okay, so 2 last questions. Talking about the complex estates that you guys have, at what point does the non-stop repairs at an estate mean that you're looking seriously at regeneration? Like, where is the line that you draw as to, right, this is when regeneration will have to happen? And the second question is, will residents be expected to pick up the tab for all of these increased repairs that have come about from long-term underinvestment in these properties? Will residents be picking up the tab through whatever form, service charge increases, etc.? Will residents be picking up the tab for long-term underinvestment, problems caused by long-term underinvestment?
Yeah, so in the paper, there's the reference to the strategic asset management team. So that team carry out full options appraisals. That's based on local knowledge, on spend, on the data that we have in our systems. We've also recently commissioned external surveys, internal and external on Sadler's in particular, but on 5 key estates. And all of that information at the moment is being fed into our asset management system to assist with this options appraisal. And it's essentially that team, once we ask them to intervene, look at the extensive surveys, they drill into the cement, they look at the steels, they look at, you know, the structure of the whole estate, to come up with a full set of options, which is what we've undertaken to bring back to the leader's office by December, once they have concluded their investigations. So it's very much a sound asset-based approach. It is led by repairs, but especially with Sadler's, local knowledge tells us that we need that options appraisal at this time. In terms of underinvestment, we do need to be quite careful here, because the kind of systems we're talking about, like no fines and Sadler's, some of these, the shelf lives were from the outset 50, 60 years. So there are different problems, different issues, different deterioration levels of different types of properties, and the options appraisal takes that into account. And obviously we'll liaise with residents once we know the direction on each individual regeneration scheme is known to us.
Great, thank you very much, Marek and Dan. If I could go now, I'm just conscious of Jill being online. Jill, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Chair. And my apologies to everyone that I'm not actually in the chamber with you. Unfortunately, I was having to deal with boiler repairs in my own premises. I've inherited a number of estates in the ward that I operate in Cricket Green. Those include the London Road estates, which also includes the Glebe Court estate. I also have Phipsbridge, Belgrave Walk, Cherry Tree. It's quite a selection of premises that I encounter. And what I found really quite sad is the fact that my inbox is predominantly dominated by Clarion complaints, problems, issues of varying degrees. And I can only echo what my colleague Dan has said, you know, but I'm not going to dwell on similar questions. I have another set for you, and that relates to the relationship between leaseholders and Clarion. And I specifically referred to some problems that one of my residents brought to me. She owns one flat in Frensham Court, and she also owns some premises that run alongside the Glebe Court estate. Now, her experience, and we'll call her Mrs. C to obviously protect her in a public space, but I'm happy to provide her details to you separately. With regard to the premises that are alongside the Glebe Court estate, she has spent getting on for 3 years, think about it, 3 years, trying to engage with Clarion to deal with the impact of trees that are pushing walls into her property and affecting the safety of her tenants, and the fact that these trees are forcing brickwork, which is dangerous. Never has she ever had one response to an inquiry. So much so that when I went on an estate visit with the leader this summer, I decided to invite her along to speak to one of the housing officers. And we went to the space that she was concerned about. Photos were taken, lots of umming and ahhing, and oh yes, we see what the problem is. Notes were taken. We will be in touch with you. This should be resolved. We need to investigate where we can, make it safer. To this day, not a word, no response whatsoever. And that's after actually seeing the person in person, standing right by the problem. So you can imagine why a leaseholder becomes quite upset by the fact that, you know, Clarion won't engage with them. But with regard to actually leaseholders within the actual blocks, if there is a leak that emanates from a leaseholder's property into one of your tenants' properties, the difficulty that your tenant has is that the repairman will come along and say, oh, well, yeah, no, this is the leak that's coming up from upstairs. You're going to have to go and talk to the leaseholder. But wait a minute. That's not how it should work. Clarion, who is the owner of the premises wherein the leak is pouring into, should be contacting the leaseholder, not leaving it up to the tenant to organise. And so I get a phone call from the woman who for 8 weeks has had a leak and not one housing officer has offered to support her, engage with the leaseholder and get this repaired. The woman was in pieces. What do I say to her? Speak to the housing officer. Well, they've told me I've got to deal with it. Well, why should they? Why should that tenant deal with it? You have powers to contact these leaseholders, and if they're subletting, which in many cases they are, then you need to engage with that leaseholder and say, we need access in order to make a repair that is affecting our premises below and causing more damage. That's one example. 2 weeks ago, I received the call from the...
Sorry, Jill, would it be possible to get to a question? Just, I'm really conscious of the time that we have. And
okay, yes, I apologise. I apologise. One more thing in terms of empowering the TMOs on Glebe Court Estate. Again, similar problem, a leak that's been going on for 2 years from a leaseholder's premises into a tenant. The TMO had no power or knowledge of power to be able to go in to the leaseholder's premises to fix a leak that's been going on for 2 years down the block. So my question to you is, what is your process? How do you engage with leaseholders and deal with repairs that are affecting your tenants and your buildings and causing the damage? Because right now, all I'm seeing is a huge disconnect.
Thanks, Jill. And yeah, please do.
Can I start? So, I mean, Jill, it's not easy. The first thing is, in terms of leaks from leasehold properties, clearly we don't expect the tenant to sort it out. What we do often say is, have you had a chat with the person upstairs if it's coming from that thing, which I think is reasonable, but we don't expect them to then, you know, take it all forward, etc., etc. So apologies if that has happened on this occasion. It is difficult. We don't have an automatic right to go into a leaseholder's property. Not everybody lets us in. There are subtenants, etc., etc. So it's not an easy process. Ultimately, we would have to go to court if we wanted to get into that property, if that person weren't going to let us in. One of the things we do want as a housing association is we do want to have better powers to go into properties to carry out some essential repairs. It's a long and tortuous process. Having said that, and I'd like to have those details of that case, Jill, so we can certainly contact you afterwards and get the details of that specific case so we can have a look at the chronology and everything. Because yes, we don't expect tenants to do it, but it is a difficult area of law in terms of if leaks are coming from leasehold properties. To be fair to leaseholders in general, if there's a leak from their property, they're interested in getting it sorted out. It's causing a problem to below, but it's also causing a problem to their property. But we do sometimes struggle to get in, and it is then a tortuous process. But I'm more than happy to look at the details of that particular case.
I appreciate that it's a torturous process, but probably more torturous for the person that's actually suffering from the leak that's coming into their premises. And again, they are not supported. And what I would like to see is that you now present us with a protocol that will be enacted that gives your tenants, not your leaseholders, but your tenants, a way of saying, this is happening. What are you doing? I've contacted the leaseholder. I can't get hold of them. This is now your job, because this, at the moment, the buck's being passed, and the stress and anxiety that it's causing so many of them, it's beyond belief. No,
I mean, more than happy to look at that. We shouldn't be passing the burden onto the tenant. So more than happy to look into that.
Absolutely. And the other thing is I would like to see and understand or have a review
Jill,
of...
we'll get
Sorry.
to recommendations at the end, if that's okay. Do you have any other questions, or can I move on?
I would be very interested to understand where we lie with the potential use and some kind of survey done of how many empty community spaces might exist in some of these blocks that we could actually offer to residents associations to use. I know of one at the bottom of Frensham Court, which I've identified, but could we have a survey and a production of where these may exist and where we can use them, please?
If you'd like to answer that,
I mean, we can enter into a discussion if we know where these spaces are. Not all of them would be adequate for hosting meetings, etc. But if we have a list, then absolutely.
Brilliant. Yeah, because I know from personal experience, there's one in Colliers Wood that was being earmarked. It was a community centre. I think it was then going to get turned into flats or something like that. But from what I've seen, it's been sitting vacant for about 3 years now, and it'd be great. And just as Jill mentioned as well, that's just our two examples of two community spaces that we know. So it'd be great to be able to have a look at how, if that's the case for the community spaces in Merton and how they're being used. But we can come back to that later on. Any other questions in the room? Dan, if I can go to you next.
Thank you, Chair. So far the focus has been on the big estates, but not all areas of Merton have big estates. They have quite a lot of individual Clarion homes and some very small sites. And so what focus does Clarion have on those sorts of properties? Second question is, when is a repair visit a actual repair visit? So I've had cases recently where a resident has said Clarion's due out, turns up, no repairs actually done. It turns out it's just a survey or some other reason. And then thirdly, on these estate visits that we do on these little estates, when actions and notes are taken, are they actually logged on the system and action? Because every 3 months and the next quarter and then the next quarter, the same things come up. So how is it logged and how is it actioned?
So yeah, we recognise that the estates often dominate a lot of our conversations. We've just introduced a vice chair to the Merton Community Panel that's not from a large estate, and that was part of the thinking, to start getting a wider view and shift the focus. The non-estate properties tend to be more traditional build. They're easier to work on. There's not a huge amount of issues. The problem, I guess, with the non-estate properties is that when it comes to roof replacements and those kinds of works, they are very expensive. And often the biggest problem there is if there's one leaseholder out of 3 or 4, the Section 20 process gets more drawn out. But the satisfaction surveys, they're not confined to the big estates. They are throughout our stock. And the neighbourhood housing officers are assigned to the non-estate based properties as much as they are to the estate based properties. So I'd like to think it's equal, but certainly less repairs from those types of properties because they are more traditional in their build. The turning up and not doing any work, this is where I do think locales comes into its own. If an operative closes down a job having not completed any work, and there are sometimes very good reasons for that. If the resident goes straight into locales and says they are dissatisfied, it gives us the opportunity to call back and say what happened, what went on, and then kind of hold the contractor to account. There will be times when the repair is either submitted online or through the contact centre, a non-technical description given, and the wrong trade may go out, or it's actually far more extensive than it appeared originally. So more time is required, multi-trades are required, tools, equipment are required, or parts are required. But that should be explained to the resident, who you would think, had that been explained, will go on to locales, say, look, not overly happy, but at least it's been explained to me, and we can follow that up. But if it's happening for no good reason, if we can follow that up, live on locales, then that's we'll hold the contractor to account for that. There will be, and again, this goes back to complexity. There will be times when the contractor themselves doesn't have the technical knowledge to think through the solution, or the solution will be extremely expensive. And at that stage, we expect them to come back to one of our surveyors to put in a survey visit to actually scope out and specify what works are required. But if we're sending someone out because we need a survey or specification, we'd have hoped the resident would be aware that it's not to actually do the works themselves. And especially on planned maintenance, it does happen a lot more, because we have to measure up, we have to scope out some of the works before we actually come and do them. But that should be explained to the resident before that person arrives, so they're not expecting the work to be done. But yeah, where it is happening, we acknowledge we must keep that to a minimum. Disruption isn't acceptable. And on estate inspections, so we do publish the estate inspections, we do log the works, and we do a follow-up at the next estate inspection. Sometimes the estate inspection is sooner than the time given for that type of repair. And what we're trying to roll out to all of our caretakers and our estate-based staff, and I think it's rolled out or in the scope of being rolled out, where they'll have direct access on a mobile device into the repair system, so that if someone approaches them and say, why isn't that done? They'll be able to go into the repair system and actually see the stage that repair's at. And we do get that quite a lot on some of the communal repairs, especially around communal doors. We have quite long lead-in times for some types of materials. Doors are somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks at the moment, which is a significant improvement on 6 months ago. We were at one stage quoted a year for a specific type of door on one of the estates. So sometimes there is a delay, and what we need to figure out is how, on those really long delays, we keep residents informed, because although we're progressing that repair, of course, that's not being communicated more widely to the people that are walking past that repair on a daily basis. So yeah.
Great. Any more questions? Are you happy for me to move on? Brilliant. Any other questions in the room? I'm going to Victoria.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on the leaseholder point. My understanding from a leaseholder in Rains Park, where I am, in the West Barnes estate, has quite a lot of leaseholders, is they have a completely different system for reporting repairs, which is a bit more limited, I think they feel, compared to the tenant system, and often results in also a breakdown in communication, as kind of Jill's illustrated, when leaseholders might do the good thing and request something. When it eventually does happen, then it's not communicated to tenants. I just want to understand, with the Equine survey that you've got in there, does that apply to leaseholder repairs as well, or is it just to tenants? And if not, are there plans to implement something similar? And then the second point is more broadly around communication. I think, like Dan said, we've all written letters and followed up points, and had some responses that, So we've all written letters and followed up on points for residents, but not always had a satisfactory answer back. One in particular that sticks out, again, on the West Barnes estate, was around roof repairs, and lots of scaffolding went up, of which a lot of the ground floor residents weren't made aware of that it was going to be going up. One told me that she only heard on the day, and when she said to the scaffolder, what would you have done if I wasn't in? He said, I would have jumped over your fence. It went up in February and it didn't come down till July, even though the repairs were done in a much shorter period. So it was up for a long time through the heat wave. So there's actually one resident who wasn't able to open their windows. The scaffolding's still up, and now it's taking longer to remove because it had so much pigeon waste on it. We contacted Clarion, and it went up to you, Marek, and were told that it had been removed, and it hadn't. there is a real breakdown in communication, I think, when it goes up to those levels. You know, you're talking about SMS with the engineers, which is obviously great to offer these range of services. But as Sarah said, you really need to also get the basics right. Notice boards aren't updated. There's still things that really outdated information on COVID. So it's sort of also just how you sort of looking at your communication channels across the piece to improve them internally and ensure that they're sort of fit for purpose and work for all the different types of residents you have.
Yeah, so it's not that the leaseholders use a different repairs system. They call through in the same way. It's the responsibilities are different. So obviously we won't repair inside a leaseholder's home, and depending on the type of lease they're on, there's different responsibilities. So there may be challenges sometimes where leaseholders are trying to call through a repair that isn't within our responsibility. I mean, I mentioned Eastfields before. You know, the repair of the roof in their leases was demised to them, not to us, which is why we had to seek their permission to repair all of it. So it works both ways, and that does cause some anxiety sometimes in terms of a leaseholder trying to report something and not getting through the system. They can report communal repairs, and sometimes if the location isn't descriptive enough, we get it wrong, and we say it's a leaseholder responsibility. But I hope that's rare, because it's quite clear where it's communal and it's within our demise in terms of the lease itself. Yes, they can use the Equans app. They were the one reporting it. Therefore, as long as it's a mobile phone, the same kind of appointment time, scheduler, all of that is sent to them, and they can themselves rate the engineer and the repair once it's completed as well. So yes, they're on that. The mistake on the letter, I can only sincerely apologise for. We had been informed by the scaffolders that scaffold had been struck. They'd struck a different scaffold. So absolutely hold my hands up. It was incorrect information. And as soon as we realised, obviously, there is the issue of having to clean the scaffold before we can take it down. So yeah, that apologies for that. We do keep scaffold up longer at times to check that a repair has been successfully completed, and it's happened a lot over this summer, especially with roofline repairs and anything to do with water penetration. Because we had such a long period of dry weather, we tend to not want to sign off a roof repair unless we know it's absolutely being dealt with. And obviously the surveyor quite rightly was waiting for it to rain. We didn't anticipate that it would be such a long dry spell, and that has caused issues over this summer. But once the repair is complete, we absolutely want to strike the scaffold as quickly as possible.
And yeah, I think it's
notice boards. I'm very sorry if they're not up to date. We will sort that out straight away.
Yeah, I mean
it's just a
yeah,
common sense.
It's not even at the bigger estates, it's in those smaller ones
Yeah.
that Dan talks about as well.
Yeah, no, that's unforgivable. Yeah, and we will sort that out. Yeah.
But yeah, I think also with the scaffolding, if that was the case with the dry spell, it's just there's no communication back to residents about what's happening. They just feel like they've been completely
sorry, I totally missed that aspect. I think it's in the paper. I know we discussed it when I was speaking to the plan maintenance manager. So up to now, we've relied on the communications around planned works to be done by the contractor, and we've had multiple reports that it's really late on the day, not circulated more widely to everybody. So we've moved the responsibility for communications back into our planned investment team, planned maintenance team. So they will be the ones that are advising residents so that we're sure that it's well in advance. We've also, under our business plan, moved the role of the NRO to be more, or are moving, because it's just in train at the moment, the role of the NRO to be pivotal in terms of all of the teams working on the estate, speaking to them, so they're the central point of contact, and they can go out, link all of these works, communicate to the residents. So it's all coming through one person, just so there is an identifiable person. And if communications don't happen, we can then kind of quickly trace where it's gone wrong. But appreciate that on a few of the planned maintenance programs, the communications have been far too late.
Thank you. And over to Anthony.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentations. I mean, as one of the returning panel members, I feel I've been here before. We've sat and heard about the vast improvements that are being made and the apologies for the problems that have gone before. I don't think it's an unfair characterization to say that the presentation we've heard and the report give an impression of a reduction in the number of repairs being requested. You know, the works in progress figures are down. You've got Para 2.5, which has got 10% fewer orders in this year to last year. And I wondered if this might be an opportunity to bring in Merton's housing team and to ask. I know our head of housing is here, whether he might be able to outline what level of complaint and query makes it through to his team that relate to housing association properties, because it feels anecdotally, at least, that the number of repair requests, these problems are not going away, and we hear all this great stuff, but I just want to get a sense, a sort of reality check of how much work is coming through and where it's going.
Paul, are you okay to answer that?
Oh, sorry, Elliot, sorry. Yeah, we have some information on that. We look back over the last sort of 18 months, it's about 165 requests across that time, roughly 9 a month. It's quite important to point out that's people reporting issues to us, and then we investigate it. And in more recent times, we've got a regular meeting with Clarion, with Jackie and Terry, who are the head of repairs. And there has been some progress there in terms of feedback to our reports to them. And that's something that's we've continued going forward. So there has been a change there, I would say.
Thank you. And if I may, is that a reduction in the number of things coming through?
It has been fairly steady, it's got to be said, but it's more to do with the, say it's roughly 9 a month. It does move a little bit here and there, but not sort of statistically significant. But as I say, it's to do with the engagement and the feedback that we're receiving.
And lastly, if I may, it seems, from those figures, vast numbers aren't making their way through to the council's housing team. I know that many of my colleagues have, and Jill as well, have vast numbers of housing repair queries coming through to them. My ward, we don't have big estates, we have small housing association estates, so I don't get vast numbers of housing repair queries, but I get some. And I just wonder quite whether we might think about where they're going, because they're not going to the housing team. A lot of residents have been here tonight telling us that things are taking a long time, things aren't getting picked up, things are going on for years and years. Collectively, we are not pulling those things together and feeding it back effectively. It's perhaps a reflection we might think on.
Well, thanks, Anthony. If I could pass over to Caroline. Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, I would like to say I'd like to thank Jacqueline Thomas for her work, because she's really been excellent. She's always got back to me straight away and followed up. And also I'd like to thank Terry Obo as well on behalf of some of my residents, because they said when repairs have taken a long time, she's really grabbed the ball by the horns and done some good work for them. So the other thing I wanted to say was myself and my colleague James here, we've been reaching out to the residents associations. So we've got residents associations in Rains Park, St Helier, Lower Malden, and I'm in Rains Park because I live on the Carter's estate, but Ravensbury, which is the ward I represent, there's about 10 different ones. And what we would like to ask, we've actually had meetings, but what we would like to ask is if at least once a quarter we could meet with Marek and also with Mr. Quinn as well, because we've got Ravensbury Grove is one of them. So we'd like to really meet you in the residence room and sit down over a cup of coffee. We can have an informal chat. The residents can let you know what their issues and concerns are, and also you can let us know what your plans are. So that is something we would like to do. Now the other things, and these are general, because as I said, I'm talking about all of the West Wimbledon and Morden estates, of which I know, and obviously I'm an elected representative in Ravensbury, so we've got quite a lot, we've got absolutely loads there really. So one of the things that we're concerned about is the maintenance of the grounds. Some of we've had like a garden street thing, and some of the residents have planted shrubs and bushes and even trees and different things. But the standard of gardening, and this is across a lot of estates, mine included, and a couple in Ravensbury, they've actually been hacked at, and some of the plants have died because the gardeners didn't have the necessary skills. So really we need them to be probably supervised or trained a bit better. And the other thing on the grounds maintenance, I mean, obviously Ravensbury Grove is on a floodplain. So what we really need is that basically there's a drain clearing schedule so that flooding isn't going to be an issue there, because obviously it is on a floodplain. I think Paul would be able to answer that one. There's also concerns about the Section 20 notices. So, really, that's something we need to talk about, but perhaps we could talk to you about individual estates. But as I say, which is where regular meetings that aren't site inspections, that are just sitting around the table having a chat to you, would be important. And one of the other things is that when there are families with social problems, what is the protocol for ensuring adequate management of repairs and maintenance while in process, and who actually signs off the work? So yeah, so those are the main things that I'd like you to address, if you could.
Yeah, I'll feed back to Terry and Jackie.
Oh, sorry. Ooh.
So yeah, thank you for that. And I appreciate that, you've reached out and we've interacted on quite a few kind of not just repairs and maintenance. There was the what they call them, the telecoms mast, etc., which has been really, really helpful. I'm always happy to meet, and we have, councillors, Councillor Irons isn't there, but councillors have asked for meetings, and always happy to meet. We've had regular meetings with a number of councillors out on site, and it's really useful, both because, yes, it's a good face-to-face meeting, see what the issues are, but also you can walk around and talk through some of the issues, and the grounds maintenance issues come up quite frequently. I was able to walk around St Albans Estate with Councillor Stringer and explain why we had done certain things with the plants, which looked extreme, but when we were able to explain, the dieback on the plant and the fact that we're trying to save it, and some of the issues with rodents, etc., nesting underneath, there's reasons usually for this. So always happy to meet, absolutely. We can put a meeting in the diary. I schedule meetings with anyone who requests it, really, if periodic meetings are needed. Obviously, I'll bring along the team who often can get operationally everything sorted. The grounds maintenance team, Chris and David, have met with multiple councillors to go through the regimes, especially if they're not working for residents. We can have a walk around and adapt them if that's what's required. Obviously, if extra resources required, it can pose an issue. But yeah, happy to do site-by-site inspections. The next one was the drain cleaning schedule. So at the end of every handover, we now get a management pack of a maintenance schedule that development have put together with a developer as to what periodic inspections needs to be put in for what types of kit. Now, usually it's around more specialist stuff, especially the heat pumps and the more technical things that are being installed at the moment that do need regular maintenance. Ravensbury, do you want to go on to that one specifically?
Yeah, Councillor's quite right. Ravensbury does have a flood risk associated with it. It's relatively low. It never actually has flooded, but it does show as a 1 in 100-year risk. And if in preparing the regeneration plans for Ravensbury, that's taken account of. So we're actually regrading the whole site. So all the potential flow of water is being modelled, and we've redesigned the effectively the layout of the ground across the whole of the regeneration site in Ravensbury, and introducing sustainable urban drainage as well, just to ensure that as much water as possible is kept on site in the event of a flood and doesn't leave site, which is best practice. So absolutely, we have a known flood risk there, but it's addressed in the design. And I think not just does it mean that we're able to deal with the flood risk, but it adds real value to the quality of the green space we're going to be able to create there off the back of that.
So I'm happy to pick up the issue about Section 20 notices outside of this and exactly what's causing the concerns and the families with social problems. I mean, this is one of the areas that the RLOs really get involved in. If there are additional issues around the family as to how repairs are signed up, the RLO stays with each family they're assigned to until the repairs are dealt with in the property. We do liaise really closely with LBM because there will sometimes be safeguarding issues that they're aware of. Their teams will already be involved in. We refer up to them. We meet with them. We ensure that there is a more joined up approach to those kinds of issues, and that most frequently happens. I don't know if this is what it refers to as, when you refer to social problems, but on the really overcrowded cases, which clearly we're well aware of, LBM are really well aware of, and we try together to push through to a resolution. I'm not sure if I've answered your questions.
Yes, thank you for that. When I said about meeting, though, on a regular basis, rather than just estate inspections, I meant with the residents' associations, like say there's maybe 5 or 6 of us, and we do meet ourselves like all together because we've got similar problems. And if you could meet us all as a group, and also it's not just about the councillors, this is about the residents, basically. I mean, that's what us councillors are here for. We're here to represent the residents. So we really want the chairs of the residents' associations to be there, because it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I meant on water needs. We do that. And there's other examples. So yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Brilliant, thank you. So just 2 quick things before I'm going to come to James in a second. But if just for the rest of it, we just keep it to 2 questions, just so that we have enough time, because I know conscious still to get to regeneration. I don't want this to go on too late. And just the second thing is, before we start the regeneration point, which we'll get to soon, we will have a short break, just for everyone to take a moment. So James, if I could now pass over to you.
Thanks. I have 2 or 3 very short questions. The first one is, please, can we have information on satisfaction rates on repairs on communal areas inside the blocks? And if not, why not? My second question is, can we see Clarion's rate of satisfaction on repairs and complaints for Merton? And my third question is, if you say yes to all of those above, how will the stats be produced and by whom?
I just have a look. So in terms of satisfaction rates on communal repairs, I think we can get those.
I need to check that because I don't know if it's part of the question. Was it a communal repair or was it not?
Yeah, I think
repairs on communal areas.
I think one of the problems is because it's not an individual, as it were. I'm not sure that we do a survey on that, but can we come back to you on that one, James? Is that all right? Because not sure, is it? And I don't want to commit to something where I've just told a porcupine.
Back to me, but I mean, when you say it's not individual, I mean, I've been to Sadler's Close, you know, and I've seen the leaks coming outside from the roof onto the door.
Yes.
You only have to step outside your door.
Oh, no, I get that. What,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is because we have the leadership factor who do our satisfaction
Mm.
surveys, and it's about whether they capture all of the communal ones. So I just want to check on that. And then in terms of satisfaction and complaints in Merton, we can try and get that detailed to you.
Yeah.
And your third one was?
I asked, so if you're able to do that for me, who are these stats going to be produced by,
okay.
and by whom?
Yeah, so we normally use this organisation called the Leadership Factor because what we don't want to do is mark our own homework. So it is an independent organisation that we, we commission to do the thing. But in terms of complaints, we can give you the information on how many complaints and that kind of thing. I think, as we said to Councillor Dan, can't remember his surname, Johnson, sorry. Yes, we could certainly give you information on the complaints and everything as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
The longer standing members of the Scrutiny Committee will know that we do produce a standard monthly report, which wasn't requested for this one, but that's complaints, answering times, etc. The satisfaction stats you're getting are on just London Borough of Merton at the moment. Those aren't South London or any wider region. But yeah, both are possible, and when we do go back to the normal type of report, that can absolutely be submitted to the committee.
Great, thanks very much. If I can now come to Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I fear that my question is perhaps looking at something which is in cloud cuckoo land in the context of some of the infrastructure problems that have been discussed this evening. But maybe it's completely off the wall here, but I'm just conscious that we have some very bold objectives set by the council for our environmental impact by 2030 and by 2050, and a lot of repairs, for example, beautiful new roofs. One might be thinking, what's the environmental impact of this? Can we be doing anything here? And I did try and see if there was any reference to environmental impact in the documents that you produced, and I didn't see anything. So apologies if I missed it, but given it's a big issue, I thought I'd ask the question.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't put anything about sustainability in the report because the focus was more repairs and maintenance. There is another meeting that quite a lot of the councillors attend that is more sustainability led, which is Sustainability Working Group, which we're presenting at on 2nd December, which is more about what's the 2040 roadmap, decarbonising our stock. What we've done, we've run a couple of pilot schemes with the government in Finland and in Kent around decarbonisation, what works, what doesn't work, what kind of savings can be achieved. So we've done a lot of work, and that falls under the strategic maintenance team. So the SAM is a strategic asset management, sorry, I'm losing my ability to speak. The SAM team, they've done loads on this, and clearly for our agenda, decarbonising, properties, it's part of the government agenda. The increased efficiency of homes, improving the SAP rating is at the heart of the 2040 strategy. We're just revising it slightly, but we have quite a bold ambition to achieve, I think it's a 72 SAP rating on all of our properties by 2040. But there's we're just adapting the property, the strategy at the moment, but that will stay at the heart of that strategy. We know we have to do better with our properties. The caveat to that is some of these properties, it's going to be really, really challenging to move it to those types of SAP ratings. And we just need to figure out what we do to those properties that aren't standard and that don't perhaps have tried and tested technologies that immediately improve the situation. I know that Paul on the regeneration, sustainability is really at the heart of everything we're doing at High Path and the other regen site. So there's a lot of kit going in there specifically answering your question. But I'm happy to get the presentation that we're doing to the Sustainability Working Group over to you.
Just before I come back to Stephen, this group on the 2nd December, I'm not quite sure which group you're referring to.
No, I think it's an internal working group with some of the councillors and LPM staff. So don't know if you
Okay, Paul, is that something you know anything about?
It may be part of the climate change action plan, or is it Sustainable Communities and Transport Partnership? We're doing a lot of crossover there with the decarbonisation partnership, possibly.
Great, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. I thought that it was obviously not focused on this issue in this report, but it just did occur to me there must be occasions on which repair gives you an opportunity to address this as part of addressing both things at the same time, spend the money once. And that was why I was slightly surprised that it didn't seem to be mentioned at all. You know, for example, the opportunity was taken to put something on the roof that you'd just replaced and only put the scaffolding up once, for example. And I didn't know to what extent it was in the plans that you did when you had the opportunity, take it to work on sustainability.
So certainly on our planned investment, which is less reactive and we have time to schedule jobs together, that is looked at. We do coincidentally do a lot of insulation at that point. We do improve some of the loft insulation if we're doing roof works, etc. Probably is room for improvement there, and it's definitely worth thinking about.
Great, thanks so much. We have time for maybe a couple very quick questions. Martin.
Thank you. I think my question obviously in relation to your figures in terms of the voids average working days. Obviously, I know that this is skewed sometimes by properties. I noticed obviously it suddenly sunk to 7.5 days. But you know, you're looking at horrendous figures like 72 days for void turnarounds, 68 in June and 51. I mean, these are incredibly long times that are happening. I mean, how many properties? I mean, seems quite worrying because obviously there is a housing need, especially given how many people we have on the housing waiting list here in Merton, that properties are taking so long to turn around. What's actually going to be the trend? Was September the exception, or is the trend on the downward spiral? And obviously, how many properties are, you know, long term? Because obviously, it'd be probably quite interesting to see some of the details behind these figures as a whole, because they give the average, but the average seems very high and yeah, is quite concerning, obviously, from our statutory provision as a housing nomination rights to Clarion.
Yeah, so those figures were absolutely affected by the cyber incident, and getting some of those jobs from termination through to the contractor. So that's why there was a dip in performance, and we have really been focusing on getting the contractor in far more quickly, getting the historic ones that were stuck for the initial months through the system, and that's your really long voids, and the contractor's just working really hard to turn around the new ones quite quickly. We've also recently taken on 2 new contractors, I think it's in the report, specifically to look at voids and complex repairs, because it's just easier to get someone to just focus single-mindedly on a quicker turnaround. I mean, actually, even with that, we have 35 properties that are available to let at the moment, which in terms of a percentage is 0.35% of all of our stock in Merton. Turnover here has always been low, has always been far lower than the rest of our group. It's you know, it's good in one way, and on the other hand, you don't get a turnover. The overcrowding case has moved on. The problem with such a low turnover, it only takes 3 or 4 properties to take a long period of time, which is why you get such huge fluctuations in the stats. I think the last time I checked, our contractors are actively working on less than 15 voids at the moment, which just shows it's not a high volume area of work.
Very short follow-up question. Obviously, the cyber incident has had an impact. Can you obviously update us where we are? Because obviously this has had an impact in terms of your performance and obviously how those issues have been addressed, because obviously it has been of great concern to many of us what happened over the summer.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a massive issue, and it started on 17th, 18th, 19th of June. We are gradually getting back up and running. We now have a repairs contact centre, and from Monday we will have a housing contact centre as well. So from Monday the service will look very much more like business as usual. We've got a huge amount of work now in terms of putting all of the work that we did in the backlog onto the systems, whilst then also dealing with new cases coming through and everything. But we are coming to the end of the issue with the cyber incident. But thank you for your patience. It's been incredibly difficult operating in this environment. I think we've sort of shared with you that it was a massive attack on our systems, and what we had to do very quickly was almost put our systems into a box so that they were secure and couldn't be attacked anymore. But it has been a massive issue, which we are coming to the end of now.
Great, thank you very much. Well, I think we might move on to recommendations now. So are there any recommendations for Clarion? Dan?
So I note the point about default, but before and after pictures is something that's going on in the blueprint, but I'd like to put that as a recommendation that this committee agrees there should be a default procedure for all repairs, not just the roof ones, but for all repairs there'll be before and after pictures that residents can refer back to. A second recommendation I wanted to point to is about resident association meetings. I didn't have time to raise this, but my understanding is that resident associations, for example, at Sadler Close, are not allowed access to the communal boards to advertise their meetings. And I think resident associations are a great tool for Clarion and residents to stay in touch. So I'd put down a recommendation that Clarion, at least once a quarter, helps advertise resident association meetings, perhaps through the glossy leaflets. They can advertise the meetings where and when they'll be made, and also a recommendation that resident associations are allowed access to communal boards for them to advertise their meetings, etc.
So could you just confirm, so that was two recommendations, could you just confirm the wording for both of those panel?
Recommendation 2, Clarion helps advertise resident association meetings at least once a quarter and allows our resident associations access to its communal boards. That's one. The first one would be, as default, Clarion provides before and after pictures on all repairs.
Great, thank you. Do you have a seconder for that? Martin? Great, fantastic. Well, I'll put that then to a vote. All those in favour? Great. All those abstaining and all those against. Great. So pass over those. Great. Any other recommendations for?
Just ask a question, just a procedural point, because I don't know these things. So I really like your suggestion about before and after photos. I've got a concern about systems in terms of storage and that kind of thing, about whether the IT systems can cope with that level of thing. So just somebody explain to me, if you make a recommendation which we think great idea, I wonder if it's possible, what's the protocol?
So recommendations, though, they go to cabinet for approval, which then come in. And obviously, if you want to adopt these recommendations before they get to that stage, you're very welcome to. But then the idea is that we'll then use this as a way, maybe in tracking and say in a certain amount of time, say 6 months time, to see if how Clarion is doing that. I mean, obviously, and see how the progress is against those recommendations.
It's not a lack of will or a lack of desire to do it. It's just a gosh, is that technically possible kind of thing?
It's a way, a way of sort of holding to account and checking in on the process for those.
Can we look at the technical? I hear what you're saying. It's great. We would like photos on each, but actually technically storing, indexing it to the right place is a technical question, which we just need to quickly check if it's physically possible.
Great. And so just one other thing, just Rosie quickly reminded me that obviously Dan had two recommendations there. The first, on the communal boards as well. So maybe we already went for, well, let's say the first one. What was the first one? Yeah, so if we just have a quick vote then on the communal board. Yeah, so all those in favour of the one on communal boards and engagement, yeah. Fantastic, great, and I think that's all in favour. Brilliant, thank you. recommendation, Victoria?
Yeah, I just wondered, given the discussions around improved communication for repairs, if there's a way that we could have you reporting back to us on how that improvement's going. So if it's going, you're saying it was with the contractors to let people know when the repairs taking place, whereas now you're bringing it in-house and you're going to be telling them when the repairs are happening and updates on progress. Is there a way that we could?
I think through this committee, we will bring back updates on it. Does that answer the question?
Could we ask then that there's a recommendation that Clarion be asked to bring that information back the next time they report back to us?
What would be the wording that you would?
This panel would request that Clarion report back on the improvements it makes to communications around repairs, and update the panel at its next, the next session where they're reporting whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Seconder. Dan. Great. And so then I'll take that to a vote then. So all those in favour? All those against? And all those abstaining. Brilliant. So I think that's all passed on that account. Great. Any other recommendations? We'll come to Martin.
I think obviously in relation to follow up from Councillor Mercer's question in terms of retrofitting and energy efficiency, we know this is going to be a huge issue going forward, but I think a recommendation I would like is obviously Clarion committing to review all its Merton properties, but how it will retrofit them to improve their energy efficiency. Clearly there's a lot of work ongoing, and I think it obviously would be helpful to know what are the plans going forward. So if that could be, a recommendation to Cabinet.
Kind of a seconder for that. Brilliant, Dan. And right, well, so can I take that to a vote? So all those in favour? All those against? And those abstaining? Fantastic. All good with that. Brilliant. Any other recommendations? Jill, I know you're, well, I don't believe you're not able to propose anything, but is there anything you'd like the panel to consider?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like the panel to consider the following, please. The panel recommends that Clarion undertakes a review of all empty or unused community spaces, for example, below the Frensham Court estate, so that some of them, if they are usable, can be allocated for use by residents' associations, including any associated notice boards, please.
Great. Well, I'm going to first, yeah, oppose that. You oppose that, and a seconder. Great. Okay. Great. Thank you, Dan. So then a vote on that. So opening up the community, looking at the community spaces that Clarion are using. All those in favour? Okay. All those against? And all those abstaining? Oh, that's so easy. I think one of these.
Chair, I have a second, if I may.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. In respect of the leaseholders, I would like Clarion to undertake to produce some kind of review and protocol in terms of how they manage their communications with leaseholders and their properties, and to provide a very clear pathway how tenants are treated in terms of repairs that are as a result of a leaseholder's premises. I think there's probably a better wording there somewhere, but I think we need to tighten all of this protocol up, please.
Yeah, and I'm also conscious that Victoria's was also, talking about the communications there with residents. So could you maybe reword that or something just to focus on just on leaseholders?
Sorry, you're waiting for my response.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Oh, I apologise.
A way of, I guess, just to word that. I
beg your pardon. Yes, to undertake to produce a review and protocol in the management of leasehold properties and repairs, and the relationship. Yes, tricky one. That is how one deals with the relationship of supporting the social tenants and the repairs relating to leasehold premises.
I would just keep it focused on the leaseholders.
Okay. But I do think there needs to be some kind of a tagline that improves the communications between repairs and tenants who are affected by leaseholders. In other words, there needs to be something going on there, because I'm not convinced by it. Can someone think of a better way of wording it?
Is that a question or?
Yes, I just want to make a little amendment to that as well. You know, I agree with the leaseholders bit, but can freeholders be added to that as well? Because there are freeholders on Clarion Estates as well.
Jill, are you happy with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's entirely apposite.
Okay, so something along the lines of Clarion to review its protocols for communicating with freeholders and leaseholders on its properties.
Yes, I think a clear linear path that sets deadlines and targets for responding to leaseholders with their inquiries, stroke problems associated around repairs that affect leaseholders and subsequently potentially tenants, stroke freeholders.
Okay, I'm just conscious of trying to make this into a
I'm
sentence
not
that
great
we
at
can use.
Formulating these things. I'm so sorry. I know what I mean.
If I was to propose something that Clarion to review and outline its process for dealing with leaseholders and freeholders in regards to the length of time it responds to inquiries.
Absolutely, complaints and repairs. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Anyone? Does that make sense, Dan? I see you're pulling a. Does that make sense? Yeah. Would you propose? And a seconder? Oh, Dan, fantastic. Right. So all those in favour? All those against? And all those abstaining? Great. Thank you. And are there any? I'm conscious I don't have too many recommendations, so maybe if we can go for one more, go for one more, James.
Yeah, I'd like to recommend greater transparency published about individual estates data on repairs and satisfaction rates from residents.
I think that's pretty clear from my side. I'm going to have a seconder. I'll go with someone not Dan. I'll go with Caroline this time. Great. And can I take that to a vote then? So all those in favour? All those abstaining? And all those against? Great. Thank you. So I think we might leave that recommendation. I think that's a good suite of places to start there that reflects our discussion. So I might bring that section of the agenda now to a close. I think just conscious that we've been going for a long time, so let's have a short break now. It's 11:09, so come back at 20 past, so that 9 minutes. Just grab a drink of water, or if you need to. But yeah, so we'll be back at 20 past. Thanks all. Brilliant. Welcome back, everyone. And just to say a big thanks to all the residents who attended. Some of them had to leave now. And for Marek and Vicky for their answers to those questions. We're now going to be moving on to regeneration. So we have just a short talk by Paul, and it's like I asked you just to keep it relatively short because I don't want to go on too far. Just enough time for questions from the panel. So if you could keep around to the 5-ish minute mark, that would be most helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I don't intend to go through the report. Hopefully, people have had a chance to read it. I'm just going to pick out just a few details just to maybe frame the conversation to follow. So this has probably been the most important year so far in the regeneration project. And I'm happy to say we're now working on all 3 estates. And there's been a couple of quite important milestones this year. First of which is obviously we secured planning approval at Eastfields, and that sort of paves the way for a start on site in the spring of next year. Almost all of the 134 new homes at High Path have now been moved into. There's just a few leaseholders now to move into the last few homes. And all those homes are being occupied by existing residents of High Path. So irrespective of tenure, we've rehoused people who live on the estate first, as we committed to from the outset. The next 50 new homes at Ravensbury are under construction now. They'll be ready early in the summer next year. And we'll be submitting the next series of planning applications before the end of the year. So a lot of activity this year. Has everything gone perfectly smoothly? Absolutely not. This is an incredibly complex regeneration project by any standard. And we've definitely identifying things that we could do better, things we can learn from. I allude to some of those in the report. Hope people have had a chance to have a look at some of those. But just bear in mind, we're just at 5% of the total number of homes we have to build here. We've got a long way to go. So this is all about continuous improvement. So learning the lessons from these early stages and seeing how we can improve each phase as it comes forward. Then very quickly, just then looking forward to the next year, we will see start on site for 314 new homes on Eastfields and the High Path. We'll see 50 new homes handed over at Ravensbury, as I mentioned earlier, and another 54 started on site. Again, all these homes are earmarked for existing residents. And the backdrop to all of this continues to be a programme of extensive community engagement, supporting people to prepare for and move into the new homes, and a social value offer that creates dozens of jobs and training opportunities for local residents. So I'll just finish at that, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I just get a sense of just how many people are interested in asking a question on this topic, just to get a sense of timings? Great, okay. Brilliant. Well, yeah, Dan, if I could pass over to you first.
Yeah, thank you for that update. It's good to see work begin to progress. Out of interest, on the High Path, have you decided what uplift in height and units that have been proposed? Because earlier on in the year, of course, that did cause a bit of concern amongst people that it might get much bigger.
Yes, I mentioned we're working on new planning applications. There's a new outline planning application which is going to be submitted probably around about December. And there's a range of numbers in there. It depends entirely really on the approval and if we get an approval from planning committee. But it's an uplift of around about between 400 and 500 homes, I think, off the top of my head, at High Path. So it's a significant uplift. But it does mean that we're able to, 2 real reasons for doing that. One, we get to build out more affordable homes, which is our core objective. So that's very important to us. It allows us to build out more affordable homes. It also means we can rehouse the existing residents quicker because we're building out what we call phase 4, that much more quicker and with more affordable homes in it. So it is an uplift. And to be perfectly honest, it does help with financial viability as well. That's no question, that's a driver here. It's a very, very precarious financial model underpinning all this, as I'm sure your officers can attest. So there's a number of reasons why we're doing that, but the primary driver for us is more affordable homes and critically existing residents rehoused quicker.
Great, thank you. Next questions, Caroline?
Oh, yeah. Regarding Ravensbury Grove, I mean, obviously you're regenerating and it's really the whole estate, because obviously you got Ravensbury Court, which wasn't knocked down, but that's still a major part of the estate. And it's integrated with the new building staff. So really what I wanted to say was there's certain things like the front doors on Ravensbury Court haven't, the new ones haven't been put in, and the residents want a choice as to what they get, but they've been told they've basically got to get what they're given, but they really want a choice. The other things there were the double glazing and just various things on Ravensbury Court need to be done, because you'll have this shiny, nice new bit, but also you need to really keep up the repairs and decoration and everything on Ravensbury Court itself, because those people want to feel part of the new development.
You're absolutely right, Councillor. We're very mindful of that, this is a long process. We've already been working on it for quite a few years. There's quite a few more years to go. So maintaining the quality of the homes of the existing properties as we work our way around the regeneration is incredibly important. Ravensbury Court's unusual in that when we did the survey that underpinned the decision to move forward for regeneration, every area within the 3 estates showed a fairly significant majority in favour of the regeneration. The only exception was Ravensbury Court, and that's why it's not included within the regeneration project. We had always proposed to retain Ravensbury Court, but to refurbish it as part of the regeneration project. But the residents there chose not to take part in it. Having said that, our responsibility is still to keep the building in good condition. You're absolutely right. We're very mindful of the fact that it's an older building. It's going to sit there whilst, we hope there's very high quality new homes across the road. The critical thing, I think, with Ravensbury, the bit that I'm particularly interested in Ravensbury, is the quality of the public realm, because we're going to be able to do really finely detailed, very well designed public realm, and everyone benefits from that, whether they're living in an existing home or a new home. But I accept your point, and I think we're meeting on site quite soon, and I'll be very happy to pick up some of that detail with you.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And if you could keep the councillors informed, because obviously we're in a lot of contact with the residents and the residents associations. So, if you could let us know what you're doing and when, so that we can come along and be part of it, if you like.
Absolutely. It'll be our planned investment team that actually will be responsible for that work. And as Marek just spoke about earlier, the comms around planned investment is getting an upgrade within Clarion. So it's all parts of that process.
Great. Any other questions? Let's go to John. Sorry, go to John quickly. Sorry.
Yeah. Could I just ask about the Eastfields vacant possession issues around moving people to High Path? Would you explain the process behind that?
Sure. So when we are assembling the site for the regeneration programme, obviously a lot of the homes on all 3 estates we don't own. So it's around, on Eastfields, it's around 45% of the homes are have gone on the right to buy, so they're privately owned. So we've been buying those homes back for the last 5 years, a number of those homes. And in total, we've bought back around about 230 homes, something like that, across the board. Now, rather than let those homes just go out to private rent, which is what we could have done with them, because obviously we need to keep them in use. We have an arrangement with your officers, and you, as a local authority, you're nominating people to live in those homes, and it's on an assured short hold tenancy basis, so it's a temporary tenancy. And so what we're doing is effectively we have to end those tenancies now, because those homes are going to be demolished to make way for the first phase of Eastfields. But rather than just end those tenancies, we're giving people the option of moving to High Path, because we now have homes freed up in High Path, because we've been moving people into phase 1, the new homes in High Path. So it gives people an option. Their alternative, your housing officers work closely with us on this. Their alternative is to present themselves back to the local authority, and you will deal with them as someone on your waiting list or a homelessness case. But they have an option to stay in borough and in relatively close proximity, which, it's not ideal, but it's better than the circumstances people might be facing there. So for us, it's about keeping those homes used to the last possible moment and getting a valuable use out of them and supporting yourselves in your homeless responsibilities. But at the end of the day, those homes will be demolished and need to be replaced. And that's the process we're in now.
Thank you very much.
Pass it to you, Martin.
Yeah, just have a few questions. Obviously, there is concern. It'd be interesting to know what is building inflation running at the moment, obviously, in terms of costs and in terms of the whole scheme and how much the economics have changed in the past year. Because obviously, as you're well aware, we did decide to waive the clawback as a council, and obviously the current economics of the regen scheme. I read obviously with interest in the report about licenses, property guardians. You've obviously had 44 buybacks this year. I don't know whether any of those have been let in terms of temporary housing for Merton, or whether they've all been on property, on licensed guardians. I know obviously there has been some concerns in many quarters about guardians in terms of their rights, because their rights are less than AST comments. So obviously I'd be interested to know whether there has been any buybacks given to Merton, because even if it's temporary for a short period of time, which I think is the understanding, and I think we're well aware of that, it does help, because we have obviously seen the numbers in terms of temporary housing go up this year. And my final point is obviously in relation to whether there's any kind of decant strategy in terms of the whole regeneration. I know it hadn't been finalized, but whether one would be available, because obviously there will be a lot of moving in terms of the different parts of the jigsaw, and what is the current estimated shortfall in terms of housing. Obviously we have 100% nominations, but will there obviously be other houses required that are outside the 3 regeneration states in order to rehouse people? Have you got any kind of estimates on those figures? And my final point is obviously in relation to the Eddie Katz site. I'm well aware that obviously Clarion have purchased that site, and then obviously in terms of where that development is at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, so I simply remember these questions, Councillor, so bear with me. But in terms of guardians, around about half of the homes that we have bought back so far are let through the local authority. So unassured short hold tenancies. The other properties, we only, if it's a short life property, by short life we mean, are we likely to need that home to demolish within about 18 months to 12 months. If we think it's any less than that, then we use a guardian service, because we absolutely must have vacant possession. Otherwise, the whole programme is held up. So guardians allow us to serve 1 month's notice. In fact, obviously we give people much more notice than that, but it can be as tight as 1 month notice. And that allows us to ensure the homes have a good use right literally up until the last moment before we demolish them. And interestingly, lots of the guardians that we've placed are people who work locally. And for example, in High Path, quite a few of the guardians living in the Marsh Court, for example, are foreign healthcare workers working at St Heliers. So people who have maybe come to London just need to find somewhere to settle relatively quickly, relatively cheap, because obviously the guardian properties tend to be cheaper, and then they find themselves something more permanent. So guardian service, you're quite right, it doesn't give you great control over your tenancy, but for some people it's an important way in to be able to live in an expensive city like London. So, and we work with specialist guardian agencies. We procured 3 agencies with many bidding for it. It's a huge industry sector now. So we've carefully chosen the 3 that we work with, and we just work exclusively with them. So that's been a very good process. We work with them for 5 years or so. I've forgotten some of the other questions, Councillor, just remind me.
I think obviously current estimates in terms of build costs, obviously in terms of the current economics of the regeneration scheme. Obviously it's been subject to past questions, and obviously in relation to any kind of decant strategy, because clearly there's a number of pieces of the jigsaw in this, and obviously in terms of forward planning, the hope is only people will only have one move, but obviously somebody might have your time too. It would be interesting to know where you are on that, and whether there will be any overall shortfall in terms of properties in the borough outside of the 3 estates which you will require, and what is the current progress, obviously, since you purchased the Eticat site as well, obviously, which is near High Path.
Okay, so on build cost inflation, you're absolutely right. That's what's keeping us awake at the moment. We're seeing build cost inflation running at 9–10%. But the thing to bear in mind here is we run like a 30–40-year business plan here. So inflation goes up, it goes down, sales rates go up, go down, sales value. So we have to take a long-term view on it. If you responded immediately, maybe a private house builder might look at it, then you'd probably be downing tools. A lot of sites are downing tools in London at the moment. Here, we're actually increasing our rate of build because we're taking that longer term, and because the need is so enormous. You know, we're not working in these estates because they're great places to live. By definition, they are neighbourhoods and homes that need huge investment. So we're pressing on with that. But build cost inflation, no question, is the thing that's really at the forefront of our minds now. In terms of decant, in the report, you can see there's just a little bit about the decant arrangements around phase 1 in Eastfields. That's one phase on one estate, and we have several phases across several estates. They're not all quite as complicated as that, but they mostly are. So the decant project, or the decant approach, varies estate to estate, phase by phase, but the intention is to keep it all within the estate itself. And the way we've designed the phasing is to enable people to stay in their own estate. It's very unusual for us to move people off the estate. It's maybe 1 or 2 cases where we have to do that. And that's where we work closely with your housing colleagues here, where we have a family who, for a particular reason, we have to move off the estate whilst we prepare the new home. That's agreed with your housing officers in advance. We have a protocol between us, and it's only when they're comfortable with it that that can happen. In fact, we had a case of that just today. There's very few cases where we have to do that, and that's partly because we're now building up the delivery program. So we've seen 134 homes come back at High Path. Say next year we start on site with 314 more. At that point, we have all the homes we need to be able to keep the transfers internal to the estates. So we're almost at that point now, but we're very, very mindful of the implications for the wider housing stock and the pressures on the local authority. That's why we're doing this. And in building the homes out, as you know, we're dealing with 35% overcrowding on these estates. So very high levels. The average overcrowding in London for social rent is 14%. So we're running at over twice that here on these estates in Merton. So we're dealing with that at a stroke in the regeneration, because all the families will be moved into appropriate sized accommodation. So although the actual numbers, unit numbers, are only going up relatively slightly, the floor space, the social rented floor space, is going up by 30%. So it's a very significant uplift in the supply of social housing in the borough that you have 100% nomination rights to. And your last point, I think, was around the Station Road site. Yeah, so Station Road site, obviously, as you're probably aware, councillors, being complicated arrangements around the planning and the planning conditions, they're now just at an end. So we're pretty well good to go on that site. The idea is that on that site, we're going to build an additional 98 social rented homes. So over and above the regeneration program, another 98 social rented homes on that site. And we'll be able to use them to hopefully fast track Eastfields. So residents who live in Eastfields will be offered the opportunity to move to that location if they want to. It's entirely their choice. There's a home for them at Eastfields, and we will design it and build it for them. But it means they can move maybe 4 or 5 years earlier. So that option is there. And similarly, those people who are in the later phases of High Path, they will also have the option. So it's allowed us to introduce an additional 98 social rental homes into the supply here in Merton.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions for Paul? Great. Well, if there are no further questions on that, I think the only thing to say is to thank all of you for your time and for coming today. I really do appreciate you taking the time to answer our questions today. Yeah, it's really appreciated. Thank you very much. I'm now then going to move on to the performance monitoring section. And I just want to say to thank John and Paul for sticking around. I think next time we might move it to the front, so you don't have to bear with us this whole time. But yeah, just to pass over to you, maybe just to give thoughts on some of maybe the particular points that came up in the performance monitoring section for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going through, I'll highlight 3, which I'll draw your attention to. First one is SP 454 within the pack, which is in relation to the collection of fly tipping within a specified period. Let me just find that in my pack as well. And during that period, we've currently operating at about 90% level. We have put a lot of attention into that and working with our service provider. That has improved in terms of that activity. And also notably, we've done 2 large scale fly tip removals in Commonside East, as well as Willow Lane. So we have worked with our service provider to improve that and the quality of that performance. And that's something that our service areas will be focusing on, as well as the quality of the reports going through the new Fix My Street app and the closure of those. So that's one that we are tracking quite tightly. The second one is SP 568, which is a red indicator, and that is the how promptly we are responding to street cleansing inquiries. That has moved in a positive direction. Now at 65%, very far from the target. However, the year-to-date value is at 49%. So in September, it has moved fundamentally in a positive direction, which is a good thing. We are very focused on improving this aspect as well. Just some background information on the indicator. So far this year, in September, my inspectors undertook 700 inspections. Year to date, we've taken 4,775 inspections. So there's a lot of eyes out there making sure that the service provider is delivering on these aspects. And this is one indicator that our head of service and the service team are impressing upon the service provider to make sure that we see improvement. And then lastly, a green indicator, which is SP 405, which is the amount of users of our leisure centers. It's really heartening to see that we have in September around 92,000 users of our leisure centers. And so far this year, we've broken the 500,000 users at our leisure centers. And I think that echoes our priorities in terms of a borough sport and promoting healthy lifestyles. So I think that's very positive. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. And yeah, like I say, really heartening to hear about the usage of the leisure centres in the borough, and that so many people and residents are getting involved with that. Are there any questions for John or Paul about anything in the performance monitoring section? Dan?
Yes, a question about parking services income. What pressure is parking services under to try and raise that, given that it used to be up at the 18-19 million a year, and the stats here are even lower? So what pressure are they under? Because I'm seeing fines being issued to people quite often falsely, and unless we get involved as councillors, they're being forced to pay. So there's clearly a problem with trying to get the fines up to get the income up. So can you actually outline if that's actually true, or whether there's other reasons for this low number?
Parking doesn't sit distinctly within Paul or my area. However, I do know that the head of parking, Gavin Moore, would kind of steer you toward that. The aim of parking services is ensure a free flowing highway network, and that the targets of income aren't actually should be the main drivers and priority of a parking service at this stage. But I'm sure a detailed answer he can supply you in regards to that. Thank you.
Any other questions, Victoria?
I had a question about building control, but I don't know if it would be a similar answer because it's sort of outside, or is that you?
We were going to do each area respectively, so I've got the planning updates.
Oh, okay, great. So it's under so it's SP 116. The other planning applications determined within 8 weeks. That's in the red. What falls into that other? Is it things like a shop wanting to update their shop front, for example? Is it tree work, which is quite prevalent in my ward? Yeah, just understanding that and what's being done to address it.
Yeah, so the types of applications we have major and minor, so that's dependent on the size and number of housing units. The other applications covers a wide range of ones, for example, listed building consent, conservation area consent. It could be advertising of a shop, just wants to do advertising, mobile phone masts, things like that. So things that aren't just housing development. So there's quite a range in there. Across some of the development control ones, there's been quite a challenge with recruitment recently. A lot of staff coming and going to other boroughs. We have been actively recruiting. There's a new senior planner starting on the 23rd of November. So we should see an uptick again in some of that backlog with the minors. And with the major applications, you'll see, I think it's actually in SP 118, the general income and development control, that it tends to run in peaks and troughs. And at the moment it looks like a bit of a trough, but we often expect that in summer, and it tends to pick up in autumn. I think the income, although it's just shy of the target now, we're expecting that to come up by the end of the year because there's quite a significant number of major applications about to come in, which are currently at pre-app stage. So the likes of Centre Court Shopping Centre in Wimbledon, Mitcham Gasworks, there's a lot of major planning schemes coming in, so that the resource will be there to deal with that into the new year.
Great. And then of course, Paul, you said you want to do your own update as well, so maybe I can just pass you to that quickly, and then we just follow up on questions after that.
Yeah, I won't go through all of them, but yes, my area for sustainable communities, it will cover some building development control and highways. So I mentioned the development control income there. It's just shy, well, at £300,000 shy at the moment, but with the major applications coming in, I think we're going to make that income by the end of the year. The enforcement backlog, that is SP 380. Again, the team have been concentrating on clearing a lot of the backlog. It's still just shy of the target, but there is a good performance by the team. I think what we've done is, in effect, cleared the easy ones off the system, and that's brought the backlog down a lot. Now we're into the really tricky ones, which need a lot of attention. So there is still resource into that, but that is going to get trickier as it goes on. The two for future Merton, which I don't have figures for yet, but I do want to give the panel an update as to when we will get the figures. And it's the annual targets. So SP 020 is the annual housing target. The council's got an ambitious housing target of 900 homes a year. We've just concluded the local plan public inquiry. The same team who do that are who do the annual monitoring reports for planning policy. So we're now turning our attention now to counting the annual housing targets. So I think perhaps maybe the next meeting we'll be able to give an update on that one. For again, similarly for highways and footway carriageway conditions, the condition surveys are underway at the moment. We commissioned them out, so that is a mixture of input from our highway inspectors. We get radar surveys of the main roads. That is beginning to trickle into the team now, so we'll be putting the data for that together, which will inform next year's highway programme. So I think perhaps again the next meeting of this group we should be able to say about what the carriageway condition is. Sorry. Final one is the electric vehicle charge points. That's very much a green target in every sense of the word for us. The target was to have 250 charge points available to Merton residents. We've hit that target already this year. We've had additional government funding for another 530 lamp column chargers. We've just started the rollout of them this week. That'll roll through to January. So that's going to be quite a wide range of chargers available to residents in the borough. If residents do want to know where to charge, look at ZapMap and you'll get a map of all the chargers in Merton as they go live. That is also linked on the council's website. So that's quite a strong performance by the team on that one. Other than that, happy to take questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And yeah, really fantastic news about the electric vehicle charging points, and you know, a big well done for everyone involved with that, both Martin in his role before and everyone else in the team who did the work securing that. So really good news on that. Anthony, I know you had a question before.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to go back to John, but I do also have a question for Paul as well. SP 407, which is on page 18, which is the percentage of FPNs that have been paid.
Thank you very much. And that's why it's flagged. That is something that we need to recalibrate. Essentially, the number reported there is based on the month. Those are the ones that are immediately paid. There's about a 3-month process in terms of the payment of the FPN and writing back to that. So it really doesn't truly reflect that, the performance of that. Annually, if we look at the performance of the FPNs issued by our service provider, it is around the 70% mark. Last year, I believe it was 72%. And also, please note that of the enforcement actions undertaken in where FPNs are issued, if they aren't paid, then they move into the single justice system where they go into the magistrate's court. Last month or the month recorded in September, we undertook 253 formal enforcement actions, and year to date, 2,326 as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. So you want to follow point? Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. My question for Paul was around the electric vehicle chargers. Obviously, we've got the extra funding and we're bringing more in. I just wanted to confirm the sort of siting strategy. So I think it's around demand, but I wondered to what extent there is a plan for considering the borough as a whole, and making sure there's infrastructure across the borough, not just in places where there's demand or the provider believes there's demand.
Yeah, so regarding the electric vehicle charge points, what we've had on the website for quite a while now is where residents can contact the council and suggest where they want a charger, and in effect that is demand led. With the lamp column chargers, we are trying to spread them around the borough, so partly meeting demand, but also putting them in areas where we want to encourage EVs as well. So it's a mixture across the board. What's happening at the moment with the rollout is we are testing the lamp columns, the fuses in them. So it's not just a case of putting a plug in, we actually have to test the columns. And some columns are either not suitable, or some lamp columns are actually back a pavement, not back a curb. So we're actually testing location by location as we go. So it's a mixture of demand and where we can put them. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think probably got time for one more question. So if it's Dan, let's go for you for that. Thank you.
Hi, Paul. I wanted to ask about the regen works in Mitcham Town Centre and the updates in Majestic Way. My colleague emailed you on the 12th of September and got no reply. I emailed you on the 13th of September and got no reply. I also emailed you on the 15th of September and got no reply. My colleague then emailed you on the 16th of September, got no reply. We then followed up on the 10th of October, got no reply. We followed up on the 11th of October, got no reply. And we followed up on the 12th of October and got no reply. So I'd like an update on the region works in Mitcham Town Centre and Majestic Way, and an answer as to whether you regularly ignore emails from elected representatives.
On those dates you mentioned, I was actually on annual leave, so apologies if you haven't had the out of office reply, but I've also at the same time, I did reply to Councillor Natasha Irons advising that I was having a meeting with the leader of the council, having the briefings on the scheme first, and then I was going to get back to members. Happy to give an update on the Majestic Way scheme and then what we're doing on Mitcham. Majestic Way, For those who don't know, it's where Morris's is in Mitcham, the pedestrian precinct between Poundland, Morris's and the multi-storey car park. That is owned by Centrica Pension Fund. They are having pre-application discussions with the council about regeneration of that site, largely driven by the leases terminating at a certain point in the future. And they're in discussions with the council's property team because we have a lease on that multi-storey car park. So whilst in principle we welcome the regeneration in principle, the plans aren't really in any great detail yet that we can share, and at pre-app we wouldn't mention that in the public forum anyway. The administration clearly have ambitions to regenerate Mitcham Town Centre as well. Last year we did hold workshops with local ward members, but clearly members have now changed since the last election. So I met with the leader and we've agreed that we probably want to rerun those workshops again. So the regen team and local ward councillors get together. A plan for Mitcham won't all be about town planning. It may well be about how the spaces are managed, how places are policed, how we run events and activities to drive footfall. There'll be much wider range in discussion than just town planning. We're looking to get that in by December. So we'll get back to you once we know when the workshops are set up to have those discussions.
Great, thanks so much. I'm sorry, we're going to have to close the meeting there because we're at nearly just shy of 10 o'clock. So just the final item is just on the work program. If just everyone's happy to agree that for the next meeting. Yeah. All right. And with that, I'll bring the meeting to a close. So thanks very much for your attention and questions today, and have a great rest of your evening.